China's at the level of debt buildup that other countries that have had big slowdowns and financial crises were near the time they slowed down. People have been worried about China's debt buildup for some time, but it's now at the range where it's probably flashing red. Now, why should we care about this? Well, two reasons. I mean, first of all, China is a big economy just by itself. Lots of people are interested in China, have money invested in China, and you want to know if there's going to be a hard landing in China. You know, what might it look like, what could trigger it, and so on. So one concern is China's domestic situation. The rest is spillovers to everywhere else in the world. So let's think about the China case first, just narrowly in domestic terms. A lot of the trade friction that we have right now with China is going to put pressure on the economy. And if they want to continue to grow, one of the challenges will be how do they overcome things if their export sector slows. Obvious potential offset release would be to pump up credit growth as they've done several times, particularly right after the global financial crisis. If you look at the debt growth since the crisis, they went from something like 10% of GDP in non-bank financial claims up to 100% of GDP. So they've had this explosion of shadow banking that has spread credit all over the place, often in enterprises that are not very viable. And so I think one risk to the Chinese economy is they step on the gas with the credit lever. By doing that, they kind of misallocate capital. At some point, it becomes unsustainable. It busts, and then there's a big slowdown and maybe a cleanup. It also sets back attempts to try to move the economy from being investment-led to consumption-led. So there's all kinds of risks of using credit as a stimulus tool. So that's one big risk to the domestic economy. In terms of the global economy, trade's a big linkage. Some economies are connected to China because of just financial spillovers. For instance, the UK has a lot of bank exposure in China and Hong Kong. But a slowdown in China would mean that there'd probably be a slowdown in the rest of the world. I've seen numbers that suggest that, you know, if you had a very hard landing in China, let's say, you know, slowdown over 3 years where the level of GDP dropped by something like 10%, you could see most of the rest of the world, the advanced economy, slowing by 1%. So that's not big contagion, but it's enough to where if those other economies were experiencing weakness for other reasons, that could trip them into, you know, a bigger slowdown.